Heather at Umi Nami Farm on a very wet January 27th, 2024. Belated Happy New Year, everybody. This is our first video of the new year. The big thing in the last month has been weather. So we all went away for a couple weeks break, kind of surrounding Christmas and New Year's. And thankfully that whole time the weather was super mild. When we all got back to work in the new year, we had this forecast that the weather was supposed to get very cold. Like they were saying maybe -5, maybe -7. We weren't really sure what it was going to do. All we knew is that thankfully that didn't happen while we were away. Thankfully it did happen when we were arriving and having time to prepare for it. Whenever we know there's going to be frost like that, we suddenly have a boatload of work to do. What we need to do is we need to go through all the greenhouses and cover up the crops with floating row cover. We also need to bring in anything in the field that could be vulnerable, like daikon or cabbage. We also need to kind of think ahead, what do we need to sell in the next couple weeks, and pre-harvest those things even from inside the greenhouse, because if it gets cold enough, even with the floating row cover, some crops could take damage, and we want to make sure we have enough stuff for you who are in the box program or other venues that we're selling to. So we got back from our break, had all this work to do, and the weather didn't just hit -5 or -7. The weather was sub-zero for about 3 days straight. As you know, it was going down to -10 at night, and that's not counting wind chill or anything like this. And so things were really frozen for a few days solid. So what I would like to show you at this particular spot is some of our outdoor crops. Now, normally at this time of year, we would be starting to harvest kakina, which is, it's kind of like rapini, only it's not rapini. We would normally be harvesting kakina at this time of year, but this is what at least one of the varieties of kakina looks like right now. There was not enough snow to protect them from the cold, and so we had those sub-zero temperatures. It was dry with a dry wind, and they just went into almost complete meltdown. Now, if you look a little further on, you can see that the kale didn't fare quite as badly. It does have a lot of damage, such that from this whole field plus another block over there, we only managed to harvest like 1 or 2 bunches each time we harvest in the last couple weeks. That being said, they're alive, and so they should recover. These guys, they might just be toast. That being said, we have other varieties of kakina in other places that have survived better. They look kind of like that kale right now, not that great, but they've survived. This particular variety of kakina, we also have some in the greenhouse, and I want to show you what a difference the greenhouse makes. So we're going to head there right now. I probably could cut through the field, but as you can see, it's pretty wet. The cover crops are doing nicely. That at least has held. We were talking with other local farmers who raise sheep, and they were finding a lot of their grass actually died in the frost. What you're seeing here is not usual grass varieties. This is actually rye, like cereal rye kind of a thing. Rye is very hardy. So whereas we can see that some species of grass do die in the frost, this and then this stuff we've got growing here on the pathways, this has survived just fine. All right, so this greenhouse tends to be pretty wet in the wintertime. So what we actually did is we went through back in the fall and we made raised mounds so that we have a dry surface to grow on. And then we transplanted these crops back in late summer, early fall kind of a thing. So this is, we have 2 different varieties of kakina here. This one is called Bansei Kukitachi. It's not the same one you saw over there. This is, this one here is Kawashima kakina. This is the same variety you saw over there. Now, you can completely see the difference. These guys are lush, they're green, they show no signs whatsoever of having been through a frost event. Now, the difference is, number 1, they're in the greenhouse. The greenhouse will still freeze inside, but the greenhouse structure will keep out the wind. It'll get warmer during the day with the sun shining on it, and so the overall ground temperature stays higher than it would be outside. You can see these wire hoops that we have here down the road. We put those there so that we could put a layer of this white fabric cover on top and extra insulate them. And so between the multiple layers of cover and sort of like the latent heat stored up in the soil, these guys came through just fine. And likewise, the takana, the mustard greens that you see here, they all survived like almost no perceptible damage. Whereas outside, you know, either things are dead, which is, you know, thankfully actually only a small percentage that actually died, or they've sustained enough damage that it's going to be hard to harvest much from outdoors for the next few weeks. All right, here we are in Minami Ichi greenhouse, which is South 1. I think I previously showed some of the crops we had transplanted in the other rows. We have since started harvesting them. These guys were pretty small when we were last in here, but these bok choys will soon be ready to harvest. I wanted to just point out what frost damage can look like. Now these guys survived really well. They were in the greenhouse, as you can see, under two layers of floating row cover. We've taken off the hoops already. Anyways, hoops, 2 layers of floating row cover. They survived beautifully, but you do sometimes see this kind of like, it's like a little bit of like a waterlogged appearance in the leaf kind of a thing. This is not terrible. Like that's very, very, very light damage. Sometimes if that gets worse, it might start to go rotten or something like that. But that's an example of what we might see for light frost damage. This leaf too has the kind of waterlogged appearance along the leaf there. So thankfully we got off really with very little trouble. Okay, this one here, you can see heavier frost damage. You see how in the center there, the leaf tissue has this kind of watery appearance and it's tearing very easily. So this is probably unsellable at this point, kind of a thing. Like these other guys are probably sellable. This one's unsellable. So that's frost damage. That being said, it would have been way worse without the greenhouse and without the 2 layers of floating row cover. Now, having pointed that out, what I actually came here to show you guys was these turnips. We sowed these seeds on the seed tray back on October 15th. And transplanted them some kind of, you know, November-ish, mid to late November, somewhere in there. We normally would stop sowing turnips at the end of September. We would normally plant multiple beds in the greenhouse, overwinter those, and that's all we're going to get. That being said, as I've been saying, we're experimenting with more of this transplanting. We started experimenting with transplanting turnips last year and had some good results with spring sowing going into the later spring months. We're also finding with these guys that this is allowing us to have nice turnips that aren't bolting yet by sowing them on the seed tray later than we would normally direct seed and then transplanting them in the late fall. Now these guys are just about ready to harvest. We're going to harvest them either today or on Monday, depending on how much time we've got. So if you're in the box program, we've probably not had turnips for you in the last few weeks, but you might start to see a little bit coming in the next couple of weeks because of these transplanted things. So it kind of feels like, even though it's only January, there's a lot of momentum going in the farm right now. I know when I got back from winter break, it felt like stepping onto a treadmill that was already in full motion. But it's good. It's good to feel life happening. It's good to feel plants growing. And we are really looking forward to the coming spring. So we look forward to sharing the next video with you. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. Bye for now.